So guys, I came across a Twitter post that it kind of made me cringe with some advice for Dungeon Masters. And look, this isn't an attack video or something, okay? This is not about the person who made the comment, because I saw that this particular Twitter post had kind of like blown up in the D&D 5e community, and there were a lot of people supporting and echoing this advice like it was something to be championed for DMs running games of Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so for the second time, all right, I want to reiterate that this isn't an attack on this individual, and I don't think that this young individual is a terrible DM, and I would ask you guys not to hunt down this post and harass anyone about it, okay? Seriously, please be cool, YouTube community. But let me show you guys what this post said, and I want to talk about why this is really, it's one of the worst rookie mistakes I think you can make as a Dungeon Master at the table. And then I want to give you guys some better alternatives to approach this situation and issue instead, okay? So here is the advice to Dungeon Masters, and here's what it said. Dungeon Masters out there who get upset when your party kills your baddie too fast, just double their HP mid-fight. Who's gonna know? No one's gonna know. Okay, so that's basically the core concept of this video. Is it okay to buff enemies in the middle of a fight? To change stats to make it harder on players in the middle of a fight? Why can't we just fudge stuff behind the screen? If players are doing better than you thought they would, what harm could possibly come from that? We'll just, we'll secretly adjust the fight to go as long as it needs to. Who would even know? No one's gonna know. Please, please, please heed my advice here, Dungeon Masters, and please don't do this. First and foremost, it breaks the golden rule of the Dungeon Master screen. You never, ever, ever cheat against your players with the DM screen. That's not what it's there for. It never was. And if you think the DM screen is there so that you can fudge rolls or stats with abandon, it might behoove you to recalibrate that line of thinking. Veteran Dungeon Masters know the truth. Okay, the screen isn't there to cheat your big bad monster's saving throw, which is basically the exact same thing as nonchalantly doubling the monster's HP in the middle of a fight to make it longer. It's there to protect your players from your mistakes. That's it. It's there so if you realize that you've thrown too much at the party or have made an egregious error, you can prevent your mistake from ruining the game, not the other way around. Secondly, if you're upset that your big bad monster is going down too fast and that the fight needs to be extended with HP, you are stealing your player's agency, which is arguably the single worst thing you can do as a Dungeon Master. I mean that. Nothing you do as a Dungeon Master is going to break a group down faster or ruin a campaign faster than a Dungeon Master stealing their player's agency. The moment, and I mean the moment, your players feel like their choices no longer matter, guys, it's hard to recover from that. And it's the exact same reason D&D players hate railroading. Everyone who has played D&D has experienced railroading before, and every DM has been guilty of it, okay? Myself 100% included in that. Mercer, Perkins, Crawford too, okay? It's a rite of passage as you learn the game. The reason it's thought of with such vitriol is because the players feel like they don't have agency, that their choices don't matter. If you are approaching a combat with your players with the mindset that the fight needs to be at least 5 rounds, at least 3 rounds, at least 8 rounds, or it's not fun, and you cheat in the middle of the fight to make that happen, you're basically saying it didn't matter with what choices your players made, that they had no agency to begin with. If your monster had 80 hit points, and the party had bad rolls in the first few rounds so that you didn't have to change anything, versus your monster having 80 hit points and the players critting twice early. So, oh no, you need to change your monster's hit points to 160 now. You are saying that the game, the dice, the spells, the choices that your players made weren't relevant. You've stolen their agency and are no longer playing Dungeons and Dragons and are now just telling a story at them. Thirdly, and I want to emphasize this, okay, particularly because of this line, who's gonna know, no one's gonna know, is just categorically not true. Again, guys, I'm not saying this to pick on this person, okay? I don't think that they are the worst DM ever of all time ever out in the Twitterverse ruining games. All right, but let's talk about this. This just isn't true, and it's something that didn't click with me personally until I experienced it from the other side of the DM screen, all right? I used to think exactly like this, so I'm not throwing stones. But with experience, as I got closer to that 10,000 hours, right, okay, I learned the hard way that this isn't true. Players will absolutely know. I had a story I've told before 3 or 4 years ago where I had a GM back in my Pathfinder First Edition days that approached combat like this, okay? It doesn't really matter what all the background was, but the short of it was that my character tried to do something that I was excited about, and the GM was obviously upset that I was going to shorten his big bad boss encounter with something kind of clever. So called for a roll. I rolled like a 19 or something, and with all my bonuses, the big bad boss had literally almost no plausible way to avoid this thing that I was trying to do. After initially saying it failed, he finally decided to let the thing happen, only to have the big bad immediately undo my clever ploy and continue attacking us as though it never happened and it didn't matter on the baddie's immediate next turn. And to say that it was a frustrating feeling, that the GM was basically forcing X amount of combat rounds with his big bad, is an understatement. And this might seem like an extreme example, but it's not. Or hell, I don't know, maybe it is. But the point's the same. If you approach combats like they have to have a round quota to meet before your players can win, regardless of how well the players might be doing, they will be able to tell. Sure, you might get away with it at first, but I promise you, you will get caught, even if they don't say anything to you directly. And it will create a bored or worse, a toxic feeling at the table. Want to know how to create a players versus DM toxic mentality for your table? Let the players think that you're cheating them behind the DM screen, because you'll be there in no time. And fourthly, guys, doing this is not just stealing your players' agency, right? It's stealing their moment. Do you want to know what I personally try to accomplish when I run games of Dungeons & Dragons? I want to create moments that everyone at the table will remember when they lay down to sleep later that night. I want memories that we can all look back and talk about and laugh about a year later, 3 years later, hell, 10 years later. And what do you think your players are going to remember more? The Hydra that you wouldn't let die so you increase the HP, so you dragged combat on for a full 10 rounds? Or that time where they absolutely pummeled that Lich in just 2 turns, then countered the Lich's spell to escape and finished him off. And how excited they all were after being terrified of him for maybe months of a campaign before they got to him and just ended up wrecking him. Okay, let's shift tone here, right? Okay, cheating the players is not the right approach. So what can we do instead? Besides just letting it happen and laughing along with your players, which is perfectly fine and often the right choice. There are some other ways that you can cheat fairly that won't steal your players' agency. The first way that you can cheat fairly is to take the story in a different direction. Okay, your big bad boss just died like a chump. What now? Well, the easiest way to cheat this fairly is to tweak your backstory and create a newer, bigger boss that was really pulling the strings the whole time. Doesn't feel fair enough? Fine. Come up with a new, bigger, badder villain that was completely unassociated with your previous big bad evil guy and have them show up in the campaign to take whatever rewards the players have now received. What if the big bad was doing his or her own thing and they had an even scarier, more powerful sister who now wants revenge on the party? What if someone has been spying on the big bad evil guy? And when the players show up and so easily dispatch the powerful foe, well, now the god of chaos is delighted and lures the players onto an island with all sorts of horrors and other powerful warriors on your world to fight to the death for survival. Instead of cheating your players and extending a fight and robbing them of their moment, use it as a catalyst to expand your campaign. Your big bad monster is dead? Great! Let the players be heroes. Then pull the rug out from under them so fast it makes their heads spin. If your main plot seems anticlimactic, fine. Your players didn't rob you of an epic fight because they did too good. No. They threw off your shackles to that story and that plot, freeing you to take the story in any new direction you want now. But what if you want to stay in this campaign and really what you want is to make this dungeon, this fight more interesting? Okay, there are other ways that we can fairly cheat here as well. The second way to fairly cheat is to simply add another room. Okay, let's say hypothetically this was more of a mini boss now. Don't double its HP in the middle of a fight. Instead, have it break through a wall or crash through the floor, leading to a whole new area of the dungeon. Maybe the Broodmother has an entire chamber of eggs ready to pop with hungry, smaller versions. Maybe your dungeon boss was secretly imprisoning and tainting a Quaddle in a chamber behind their throne. Or maybe the big bad boss had chosen this area as a hideout because it has a huge vault locking away an entire city that sits below it. Or perhaps they just finished casting their ritual, breaking the seals of a great beast that they had planned to control, and with their dying breath they laugh because they know the players will have no way to control it now. The third option to cheat fairly is really the biggest gray area of cheating, but it's still more fair than fudging hit points. And that's to give your big fight a second phase. The second phase is a great tool more Dungeon Masters should use because it does three things. First, it creates variance in the fight, which is always a positive. Secondly, it makes your world seem more interesting and magical. And thirdly, the most important, it gives your players a sense of accomplishment that giving your big boss a huge pile of straight hit points just doesn't do. They beat the first phase, they're winning, they're progressing the fight. Now, this is a little harder to pull off, but I'm going to give you guys a little key here to it, all right? The moment you realize that the players are tearing through your big fight like tissue paper and that you decide you want to try this thing, stop and foreshadow it. Seriously, foreshadow it. So let's say you want to give your big, strong boss a second phase that would include them turning into a demon, okay? That's a strong second phase right there. Well, you need to foreshadow to your players that all may not be what it seems while they are still fighting. So perhaps a light in the room reveals the powerful foe has an odd-shaped shadow with wings and horns. Or maybe their eyes close sideways like the aliens in Men in Black. Or perhaps even you can see a crystal around their neck beginning to bleed and shatter and crack as the fight progresses. That way, when the boss drops to the ground huffing and puffing, you can have them stand up, ripping and stretching their outer skin as a huge winged demon appears for the second phase of the fight. And one more little trick that is along the lines of the last two tips, whether that's including another room or giving your boss a second phase, and that's to teleport everyone to another area. This can be used as both a non-optional phase, sucking everyone in the room into a crystalline world where they have to fight the boss again with now new powers and a fresh set of hit points, or even a more fair way to do this to your players is to make the teleporting optional. So if they see the villain being pulled into a portal into the shadow plane or a crystal as before, they can choose to follow or not. The reason that this is more fair is because that they have entered into this fight with expectations that you, as the Dungeon Master, have helped shape for them. So if you're going to start throwing wild stuff at them that you haven't hinted at or foreshadowed at all leading up to this point, it's only fair sometimes that you give them that choice to follow or not. Oh, and by escaping into a new area, I don't just mean automatically let your boss escape either. That sucks every bit as much, but it is fair to your players for the villain to try to attempt to escape. So if they take attacks of opportunities and drop before they make it into that portal, for instance, well, then now you have an open portal and no longer a villain to worry about. And you get to take the story in any direction you want. Or here's a cool idea. If they die trying to escape to the portal, just have their shadow stand up and out of their dead body and walk through the portal anyways. Or even have a cloaked figure with a scythe slowly walk through and collect the body, teleporting the players away if they try to interfere. There are a lot of things that you can do to make a scene or fight more interesting if it's too short, rather than just making the fight longer by lying about how much health the big bad has halfway through and stealing agency from your players. All you have to do is try something. And who knows, it might be that catalyst. It might be that catalyst from turning a good campaign into an epic campaign. All right, so now I want to pass it over to you guys in the community. What do? You've got a huge fight for your boss planned, months of the campaign building to this point, and your players are just wrecking shop. what do? Do you let it happen? Do you fudge a couple of saving throws or double up hit points in the middle of a fight? Do you take it off in a new direction? How do you handle it? What other ways did I not cover in this video that might inspire someone's next great campaign? Let me know in the argument section down below. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games as much as I do, I would love to have you subscribe. I put out videos on DM tips, player tips, tutorials, and more stuff just like this. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, just hit the subscribe button down below and come join us. I want to give a massive shout out and thank you to all the incredible, sexy patrons over at welcomeadventurers.com. Guys, it's because of you that I get to keep doing this, and for that, I'm so incredibly grateful. If you guys like what I do here, you want to support more content like this and snacks and rewards for yourself, like hopping in a one-on-one meeting with me, I've just actually opened up a few extra slots, so there's still time to jump in this month and meet with me face-to-face, talk about your campaign, your characters, whatever else is on your mind. WelcomeAdventures.com is a great place to do that. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with those awesome memories and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time.